Hi, everyone. Really happy to be on air, and thanks for inviting me, CNBC Indonesia. It's been a pleasure and super excited to do this and share the interesting journey of glance in Indonesia. Today, I'm going to talk about something very interesting that we're doing, which is very innovative and exciting in the way we feel Indonesians will consume content going forward. And we are already there and would love to share more about what we're doing in Glance. So let's move forward. This is Andy. Uh, Andy is like any other user in Indonesia. In this case, he loves fashion, he loves supercars. He also loves this musician called Rich Brian, who I've never heard of. But he's one of those people and users who's almost always aware of what's happening in Indonesia. All his friends and family always asks Andy the latest on what's happening in movies and sports and fashion. And he's able to talk about it because he's on Glance. And it's very exciting to see how he has evolved as a user for ourselves. So that's one kind of user. But if you move forward, there are many, many Andys that we have in Indonesia. If you go to the next slide, what we see is there are a whole lot of users of ours who are from all different walks of life, but all of them are connected with the same fabric of Glance, and that of being able to discover content in a very meaningful fashion. You saw Andy, and now let's talk about another user, Nazia. And she is, of course, a Blackpink fan. She loves watching news sometimes. She's very socially conscious. And she loves watching funny videos with her own cat named Dorai. So that's another user that I can sort of think about. And then we have a third kind of user as an example called Rafi. And he's a great father. He loves playing games with his son. He loves sort of watching how to unbox these videos on gadgets. He's an absolute gadget freak. And plus, lately, he's also been watching a lot on crypto and how he can invest on crypto. So it's a very interesting user. All these people, whether it's an Andy or a Nazia or a Rafi, are all users of Glance in Indonesia. And all of them enjoy and love it because they can consume content that they love, that they like, that is always happening and selalu happening. Let's understand what are they liking about Glance? What is Glance in the first place? Would love to show you a small video that brings it out.
Masuki dunia yang selalu happening. Temukan semua yang kamu sukai setiap kamu membuka lock screenmu. Tapi bukan hanya itu. Tap dan temukan sekarang. Sangat mudah, simple, happening. Glance, selalu happening.
So you saw the video, and clearly there is a lot happening out there. The question is, what is Glance all about, and why does it even exist out there? So simply put, it is a great new content discovery platform which brings visually stunning and relevant content right on your lock screen. And that's the power of it. It's an extremely innovative experience. It combines content you love, content you like, and content you possibly might like all together. And the best part is that it's extremely premium. We felt that the lock screen of the devices are a very pristine, very untapped piece of real estate. And hence it is important that we behave responsibly when we show content to users. And hence it's extremely brand safe, it's child safe. I'm very comfortable leaving my phone, which is Glance enabled, with my son because I know it's child friendly. And that's what makes it very interesting. It's very premium that way, and yet very powerful in the way it's out there. If you move forward, I think the question now is, how can all of this come together in a very interesting manner? And I'll talk about how it is a prolific experience. How does it actually come together a lot more? Go to the next slide. So one of the most interesting things we've done is reimagine the lock screen of your device. And we've all seen the same boring black kind of lock screen, which had nothing but maybe the clock or the weather or a black boring screen. And we have re-looked at what the lock screen as a surface could be. And that's what has spent years and years of thinking and innovation on what could it mean to look at that piece of real estate and make a very frictionless experience, something that is a frictionless window for internet into the world for our users. And that's what we have done and invested in. The beautiful part is our users don't need an app or a website to download. It is all happening on the lock screen without the need to sort of really unlock the phone. And that's what makes it very, very beautiful as an endless feed altogether that they can utilize. It's far better because it actually is looking at content you love without the need to sort of wake up your phone necessarily. And that's the first thing which makes Glance very interesting for our users, because it is frictionless, because it uses a very important part of the device, the lock screen, which earlier was not being sort of touched at all, but suddenly it has lit up overall and very beautifully altogether. So that's the first big thing we've done, and it allows us to really notice how users are loving it. Look at the experience here on the right. Imagine this happening almost 200 to 300 times a day on your lock screen. And imagine when you touch it and go deeper into it, seeing things that you actually love and enjoy versus the need to go inside your phone and download an app or a website and then actually spend time. So that's the first thing that we have done here that's really interesting in the way future of content can be. Go to the next slide. The other most important thing of what do you do with the surface? How have we done something interesting on the lock screen itself is the philosophy that you don't need to necessarily go and search for the best thing out there. There's millions and millions of websites and apps now. And how do users like you and I even know what's good or bad? I mean, definitely there is great content tucked inside these millions of apps and websites. But what Glance allows them to do is bubble up what we feel is relevant and cool for different users. And that makes it possible to have a more deeper connection with our Indonesian users. As you notice, it's across all sorts of demographic. It's not just the youth altogether, it's a whole range of demographic. And that's what makes it really, really powerful, because unlike previous times where you would have to go and search for the content that you hope you like, instead, this is the content you love that is actually finding you. It's right there at your fingertips. And I think that's what I feel. Glance is where you can go deeper into the things you already love and discover new things to start loving. And that's what makes it very, very exciting altogether. If you go to the next slide. And then, of course, what you see out there is content you care about. It's selalu happening. It's always happening. It's in Bahasa and many languages out there. And it's a feed of the freshest and the most latest content of what's happening around you in the world. We feel that Glance content is a reflection of the now, of things that are selalu happening, because the lock screen is always about things that are happening now, right? Whether it's the time, the weather, or even notifications, it all reflected what is happening around your world right now. We have just taken it 5 notches up with Glance. So for example, Glance will tell Andy when Indonesia bags gold at the Olympics for badminton. It will tell Nazia when Blackpink releases a new song. And it will tell Rafi the latest information about what's happening in COVID in his regional area, or storms, or even volcanic eruptions, which of course has been a huge challenge in Indonesia. It will tell you all about everything you love in your language. And that's what makes it super, super interesting for our users. Next slide. It is also very meaningful because it is not just a feed of ads and irrelevant content. You know, whether it's Andy or Nazia or Rafi as examples, this is an experience that becomes meaningful to our users. This is the technology behind it that goes from being innovative to intuitive for our users. And I strongly feel that in the way it is happening, in the way the whole personalization works, it actually allows our users to discover beautiful content that you care about, that comes right together just for you, and all on your lock screen itself. So that's what is very interesting for Glance. And let me just talk about, in the next slide, how our users are using it, and of course, the scale of Glance in Indonesia. Next slide, please. The question is, how do we do this? How have we made sure that the experience is so good, so frictionless, so that the user actually enjoys it? And there we have done a lot of work with the top handset manufacturers, with deep integrations with Xiaomi and Realme and Vivo, so that we can actually light up the lock screen for our users. One interesting thing you should know is we are almost present in almost 50% of all new Android devices in Indonesia, which means a lot of users out there are experiencing Glance, liking it and loving it. And that's why the investment and focus on Indonesia altogether out there. Next slide. That's what we are seeing, you know. We are seeing that Glance is becoming a window to the world for a lot of our users. It's touching their minds and hearts in a way where it is not only informing them, but also educating them, entertaining them, inspiring them at times. And that's what makes it special. You know, it is beautiful, it is simple, it's authentic, and always happening. And that's why a lot of users are loving what they're seeing. Let me also talk about in the next slide how Glance has become a phenomena globally and our ambitions altogether. We absolutely feel we can change the lock screen experience for every phone on the planet. And our first goal is to do it for 1 billion devices out there, because we feel that the power of lock screen is absolutely real. Users like you and I, we pick our phones almost 2,500 times a day. And we've noticed that at least 50 times a day, Glances are viewed by our users. That's a lot of consumption. That's a lot of time being spent. And this can actually become one of the new innovative ways for consumers to discover interesting and relevant content. Because we feel we can actually redefine what content means for people. We've all done what we have done in the days of earlier social platforms, but this is a completely different take to it. And the interesting piece is we have got the scale in India already. We've got a huge number of users, almost 400 million devices in India who are already engaging with Glance, using it and loving it. And that's why we feel we want to bring this to Indonesia now in a big way. Next slide, please. As you see it, we are already live here. We've been here in the last 1 year, but the change now you'll see is that we're moving from an Indonesia focus to an Indonesia first focus, and want to redefine what it means for not just users, but also content publishers, creators, brands, advertisers, and the government. And A lot of work has gone in already. We're working with the top publishers and brands locally. Interesting partnerships being struck with publishers like Vice Indonesia, Manga Bay, and Liputan 6, and a bunch of creators coming on board thanks to our Collab Asia partnership. Very soon, we'll be working with brands and advertisers in helping them leverage this platform in a very unique manner. And of course, the government, who can use this and ride on this to give Indonesians experiences that matter to them. The other thing we have done is over the last quarter, we have expanded the Glance Indonesia team locally by 3 times. And over the next year, we plan to double in size. So that's the effort that has gone in, and super excited about where we are. If you go to the next slide and the final slide, we strongly feel that Glance is where everything you love will be selalu happening. We are so excited to be here. It has been a great journey throughout, and I would love to call on all users, brands, partners, publishers, creators to come join us right from your lock screen and have a great Glance experience. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed talking to you.